Okay, hello. This is Rich here with Fred Adam, and I'd like to try a little new experiment today. Um, the purpose of this interview is really just to get a sense for how different kinds of artists can engage with and use and be involved with the whole Oika concept.
Mm.
Fred and Fred Adam is a graphic designer, digital media storyteller. He can tell you what he does. But he and I worked, well, we met back in, he just told me this, back in 2011.
Yes,
At
in
a,
Grand Rapids.
yep, at a big history conference in Michigan. Fred, big history is all about the story of the universe and the cosmos and all that stuff. And Fred was there, and he got me really excited about his work with apps and especially like walking apps, deep time walking apps, and things like that. And so the relationship started back then. We've been working together for many, many years. He's been really an integral part of Oika and a really good friend.
Yes, yes.
We spend a lot of time
We
together
have a lot of fun, a
exploring
lot of fun
exploring up
and creativity.
in the mountains of Spain and all of them.
Yes,
It's been good times.
and in the mangrove of Florida also.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We went kayaking in the mangroves in
Oh,
Florida.
man.
Ended up camping out in the wilderness. Anyway,
You know, hammocking in a mangrove, it's so
it's
good. You know,
pretty
it's like
cool,
being on
right?
other planets.
I was surprised at how like comfortable and
Yes,
just how well that worked. It was so beautiful. I mean, to
yeah,
paddle up in a kayak into and look up into the trees and say, I'm going to put my hammock up there, and then you do, and you set it up, and then in the middle of the night you wake up and you look down, you can see all these creatures down below you in the
yes.
water. It was cool.
A lot of crabs and a lot of beautiful animals. But if your friendlies are friendly with you, and
Yeah, it
it was a beautiful experience, really marvelous. Thank you.
was really good. It's all part of the evolution of this thing too. All those experiences that we had, they really accumulate into an understanding, and
Oh yeah,
so
and a big appreciation. You know, it's building a big, big, big appreciation of the intelligence of nature.
yeah.
It's so deep. You know, it gave me so much because I was already very tuned in the problematic of art and technology and environment. I did a lot of projects with transnational terms art collective during 15 years, you know. But you really gave me a new approach because I was just treating, approaching the problematic of environment problematic from an external point of view. When I really understood through the Oika project that we are nature, we are part of it. So it's totally we don't have to look at it as if it was outside, but we have to just be inside it and live it and feel it and know it because it's us, you know. So yeah, that's really the big thing I could learn with Oika. I think so. The most important thing.
That's pretty much it. I mean, that is the key here, right?
Simple.
Is to discover how the boundary between the self and the other can soften and dissolve, become more permeable, and then how that new relationship with the world can come through our art and not just our
Yeah,
art, but also our professional life as well. Like as I know you've been doing a lot of different projects. We've worked on projects, but
yeah.
that whole thing can actually translate into economic viability as well.
Oh yes, yes, yes. Well, it's a long walk. I mean, yeah, because you have to pass different modules, no, person, place, practice, and prosper.
Right.
But prosper, it's a long way. But it's logical because you have to go first to know where you are, who you are, know your environment, and
Know
then
your
you know
story.
you.
Know your story.
Yeah, yes, of course. Your story, your backstory, you know, who makes you today, and also know as much as possible the place because knowing the place is knowing itself. You know,
Yeah.
And it takes time. It takes a lot of time, but it's full of discoveries, and it's full of new friends. I would say, because I made a lot of friends in the world of insects, for example. I love insects, and I love birds and other animals and mammals, and of course, and foxes, and all right. But insect is very special because the insect, they are just there for you. They are ready to just, arrive on your arm and talk to you, and be friend with you, and with you, and you can look at them, and you can just build this conversation or this relationship. And yeah, I rediscovered that the world of insect was a doorway to know more the intelligence of nature,
Yeah.
and behind the insect you have the birds, because the insect are the doorway also to know more, to know better the birds, and so on. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Insects seem to be very available. That you can usually find an insect, or an insect will find you.
yeah,
And that's also true of plants as well. And because you can pretty much look anywhere and find some bit of green or some
oh
plant
yes.
waiting to tell
Mm,
its story. But
mm.
also when you get good at that, like when like insects and plants are a great way in. They're a great, like you said, a doorway. But eventually, you also realize that it's not just living things that have that capacity, but also rocks and the sky, the wind, sunlight,
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
phenomena. When you practice that sort of
Mhm.
conversational way of being with insects, that can expand out into ecosystems as a whole, or phenomena, or landscapes, or things like that. It's a practice, and once you get good at it, you can really get a lot of new experience and joy out of it.
Oh yeah. For example, you can see on the Earth Stories picture on the screen.
Hmm.
It's a landscape I can see from my house, and it's I know it's place. I went there. I go there very often, and I know more and more of the mountain. And when I look at the mountains from my house, they are just part of. There are so much stories, in these mountains, that they make it like a part of the family also, like a mantis or like a bee I could meet a few days ago. They are just with me, and I am with them. It's like
So what you're
it's
saying is
good fun.
that view, okay, that we can see right now of the horizon and the mountain, that's kind of become part of you.
Oh yes, totally. Yeah, yeah. Because the practice part of the project is about discovering places, and in different dimensions. I spoke about the microcosmic dimension, teeny animals, and so on. But also, it's about feeling the rocks, and feeling how the clouds are moving in a different way because they are near to the top of the mountain. And all this is part of the experience, and then it's becoming part of our memory, our experience. It's part of our landscape. At a certain point, I like to say that it changed my dreams. I mean that I started to dream about trees, for example, because of the hammock. Really, because the hammock is super important. Because the hammock is a way to being in connection between two trees, and also you have to know the trees, and then the trees are so important. And when I look at the mountain, also I know some trees. I know where to go, and I have a vivid memory of these trees. And yeah, so yeah, I'm expanding a little bit.
Well, it sounds like you're into something good there, like that. Like when you talk about two trees and setting up a hammock, when you do that, you're kind of entering into a conversation between those two trees. I mean, you're physically entering into it, but what you said was really important. You said that it started to enter into your dreams. And what
Yes.
I think, what you're experiencing there and what you're kind of touching and glimpsing is that how we think and how we imagine, how we, you know, how we dream
Hmm.
is connected to the landscape. You know, it's like you
Yes.
said that this has
Hmm.
is changed you, and what that's revealing is how intimately connected the way that our minds work. You know, call it
Hmm.
cognitive processing or whatever you want to call it. It's really about the consciousness of nature and humans kind of being like that. I don't know.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I can hear you talking about these things that that we can explore like on the Trello board conceptually. But what you're describing there is really that you experience this stuff. It's as real
Yeah.
as any other experience. It's as real as the sun
Mhm.
itself. And so I don't know. I just
Yeah, and something very important also happened. But of course, my experience is unique, and each person who will participate in the ICA project will have their own story, their own way to feel it. But what really it was hard, because when I spent time the first months of the project in the mountain, I love the presence of nature, and I felt so good in the hammock. But when I came back home, I was like a little bit angry, because of the sound of the cars, and it was like disturbing. And yeah, it was a difficult sensation. It
yeah.
was not fun at all.
It's
I
called
was
grief.
angry.
It's called
I
grief.
was angry.
I know.
Yeah,
No.
but slowly through the practice, and I understood that we are part of nature, so every one of us
Right.
is part of this landscape, and we can't make a separation and say, okay, I go to the woods, I belong to the woods now, they're my friend, and you are not my friend anymore. No.
Right.
When you go back home, when you go back in the village, when you go back in the supermarket, remember, also this is nature. It's part of this landscape. It's part of this experience, and it's important to integrate it, and not to be angry.
Yeah. Well.
And yes,
Yeah. Well, people will.
you want to say?
Oh, I do. I think that we become kind of emissaries. We go off into the world of nature, and it inspires us, and it fills us with joy, and then we have to carry that message really back into culture, and that's the essence of what Oika is trying to actually do, is to forge those the ancient natural continuity between culture and nature. And so what you're
Yes.
describing is kind of a fractal of that. That we become that uh, the axon, the net, the thread, the mycelial network. We become agents in that. Anyway, so but I wanted to maybe get a sense a little bit for like what do you got here? Let's talk about Earth stories. What have you been working on, and how is Oika?
Yeah, I can continue with her stories, and also I would like to introduce about the Prosper module, because it's very important part. The
You want to
Prosper
talk
module.
about the Prosper module?
Not yet. I think it's a good idea to talk about her stories
Okay.
as an artist, because the Prosper module arrives after the her stories process. So it's important for me to talk about her stories. Yeah. So what was very cool is that before participating in this project, as a creator, as an artist, I had a previous idea in mind of what I wanted to do. And when I went outdoors, I say, I want to do this picture of this stuff, or I would like to do this and that, and I would like to do this drawing, and I would like to do this video recording. And the practice changed everything, in the meaning that it you don't have to arrive at a place with a previous idea of your experience, or you don't have to project what you want to do to the place. No, you have to just open your senses, feel the place, and something can emerge, something can happen, an interaction with a bee, for example, or perhaps you just fall asleep, and when you wake up, you was just, in your dreams, and you have not had a direct interaction, or you don't have a special story, but it's not a problem. But what is very important is let the story emerge, let the interaction emerge. Just open up your senses and be ready to whatever can happen.
That's
And
yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's a beautiful kind of an insight. Like today, we've forgotten how to do it. Everything is sort of controlled and directed, and
Mm,
there's so much expectation. But when Oika happens, when that feeling, it's usually when you least expect it, or when you don't plan for it, or when you're not paying attention. Especially in my case, the feeling of Oika almost always hits me when I'm lost in some, I'm not in control, or I'm not orchestrating the experience, and then it just happens. So I think you're,
mm.
you're identifying something really important there.
Yeah, for example, I did a diagram yesterday because I did a lot of video recordings, and also I did a lot of pictures on the Instagram. And I just wanted to review a little bit all the experiences I have had. Or
Okay. I'm
and,
zooming in on it. I'm zooming in on it as you talk, just so you know.
okay, and then I was just a little bit playing to connect some concepts to different Earth stories. And the Earth story is the idea that I said to go to a place, connect with the place, open the senses, listen carefully, look closely, open, just be friendly, and something happen, or an interaction, something special happens, or a feeling happens, then it's a moment to capture it with a picture, with a drawing, with a text, with an image. And because it's interesting to try to reflect this simplicity also to the others. It's important. And so yeah, I did a lot of video creation, which is finally, yes, a post-production of the experience. I mean that what I capture, I I create a video uh, mm, explaining this experience, but this result was not previously uh, controlled. It happened at the place. It's
Yeah,
really
it's an emergent property of everything that's going on, including your past experience, the experience of the place, everything that's going on in that ecosystem that extends from the biology and the chemistry and the geology and all that, but also
mm,
your previous experience, your history, your stories. It's all one big ecosystem of communication, and then so these Earth stories are tapping into that in a lot of ways. Can you zoom out on the, because I was zooming in on my end, so
yeah,
you can zoom
sorry.
back out, and then I'll do the zoom in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for example, probably for me the most important concept, the deeper concept, is gratitude.
yeah,
It's so important, gratitude. And wow, because it gives nature give us so much, and people also give us so much. Because because also they are part of nature, and gratitude is very important.
yeah. Well, I find that I sometimes like move through different ones. Like at one point, tacit learning was my favorite. At another point,
Okay.
Radical
Yes.
affection was like I was so immersed in radical affection, and lately it's been an activism, which is a new one, relatively new one, but it just goes so far. The idea of an activism, when you actually begin to understand it in the fullest sense, when you begin to experience it and conceptualize it, it just reveals how deeply interconnected our mental landscape is to the landscape as a whole, and and, and that works both in a beautiful way, like wow, this is full of gratitude and affection and beauty and everything, but it also works in the, oh wait a minute, all my pathologies and all my not so good ways of thinking are also reflected in the world, like right now, like our
Yes.
relationship with animals is reflected as a virus and the pandemic, and so it's funny how it works both ways. But the point is that an activism concept really goes a long way to making that reality.
Okay, I didn't pick up this one. I didn't pick up every concept because I believe that we are keen to be more tuned to certain concepts and
Absolutely.
less to others.
Absolutely, but eventually they start to really dovetail with each other too. For
Yes.
example, the three core concepts of narrative, fractals, and emergence. Those three things, I mean,
Yeah.
think about how powerful those three concepts are in your experience of the world. We see it everywhere. Now that we kind of know what it is and we're comfortable with those, we can see those three concepts at work all around us. It's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, 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 absolutely.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed also, of course, cybernetics.
Yeah.
Cybernetics is communication. Then how
Yeah.
do you enter in communication with other species?
Yeah.
Wow, it's so cool.
Well, and
And I believe,
the other one I love about cybernetics, like it's a kind of like cybernetics is great for that experience of communication, but there's a deeper sort of insight to cybernetics, which is even more powerful, and that is that you can't escape the system of communication. And this is what the engineers who sort of thought about cybernetics early on, what they discovered was, and they had to invent a new term, they called it second order cybernetics. But what it's saying is that, you know, you can't actually remove yourself from the system of communication that you're in. Because even if you're like the best scientist in the world and you say, okay, I'm no longer going to be a part of that system of communication. I'm just going to study it from out here. I'm going to find a new place to study that system. You can't do it. That system, this new place, is still part of that system, and so it's just like inescapable, obligatory belonging.
yeah, and we have to enjoy it, a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah, for example, from my experience, birds are beautiful and very open to introduce you to cybernetics
Oh, yeah.
because birds are communicating by voice every time, by sounds. And also, you don't see much birds with the eyes. You have to see birds with the ears, which is really cool. Then the sound is very interesting as communication and try to discover and understand this communication and enter into the conversation also,
Yeah. Well,
in a
and
way.
not only do you enter into it through sound, but you have to also remember that as a bird sits on a branch somewhere and sings, it's breathing. It's breathing oxygen in, oxygen that's been created by the leaves through photosynthesis using the energy of a nearby star that we call the sun. And that bird is singing and exhaling. And then eventually you inhale, that same breath of the bird. And so I know this isn't what was the one we were talking about? I forget, but
Cybernetics.
cybernetics. But it just when you know all that, it just totally enhances that whole experience. Anyway, we're getting a little bit uh,
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, that's
too
cool.
loosely
Absolutely.
for
Yes,
people,
yes.
but
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
so
But the air is also so important. It's an entity also. The air is an entity moving around, making sounds. it's so beautiful
Yeah.
to be aware also of the breath and the air, and also when you know that the air has been built by bacteria, it's like wow, by microorganisms. You say whoa,
and that there
it's
was
very
a
cool.
time on this planet when there was no free oxygen. So this stuff could not have been happening because there was no oxygen in the atmosphere. It took the great oxygenation revolution, 3.78, whatever it was, 3.6 million years ago. It took a billion years ago. It took that event in order to set the stage for all of this that we're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
Birdsong.
And it's story sensing also one of interesting concept. When you can deeper into the universe, dive into the universe stories, and when you have this knowledge, it's much more enjoyable.
And real.
As you said, you understand this when you just see a bird and you think about the oxygen and so on, and it's connected with the story of the universe and the
Yeah.
planet. So
And that experience, okay, on a personal level, it makes a difference in your life. It enriches your life. There's just no doubt about it. But guess what?
oh yeah,
That experience, not just personal but collective, on the social and cultural level, will also make a difference. Because my hypothesis with Oika is that experience will replace a lot of the discontent that we feel and a lot of the damage that we do to the world and to each other that comes from that sense of disconnect. I mean, it's that sense of discontent that will tend to go away when we have this other access to beauty and joy
yeah.
and the sense of belonging.
Mm.
That's the trade-off. The trade-off is this crazy, striving, hyper-consumptive, anxiety-ridden world with a world that feels at home, that feels content, that sees beauty, that's free and available
Yeah.
all around us.
Mm.
There's got to
Yeah.
be there's a logic there that has to lead to a better world in some way. Okay.
Yeah, it's there. So it's just opening your senses and your mind, and it's not hard science. It's around.
No, it's art. It's this, and
It's art. Yes, also
so,
yes.
so this
Yeah.
is now like to kind of bring this full circle. So it's like, well, there's all this science and all this conceptual understanding and all that stuff. But then how do we invite artists into this conversation so that they can actually fulfill the bigger role of art, which is,
Yes. Yes. Okay. So.
well, you're already doing it, Fred. I mean, you've already, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
From my point of view, and I would like to introduce a Prosper module, which is very important in the project. What was very strange, and I can tell you a story about that. In September, we have been totally flooded in
flooded,
Spain.
flooded.
Flooded, yeah, flooded. And a lot of insects, again, were trying to escape the water. And then I saw a very, very rare mantis. It's a mantis, it has a shape of not a leaf, but a branch. It's a branch mantis. Wow, absolutely stunning, beautiful,
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
And I was just like stuck looking at this being walking like that, and wow, I was totally, imprint his image, his motion, his being in my mind, and it's still in my mind. And what is very interesting is that because now it's part of me and it's my mind, it's like a present for me. It has been a big present because it was difficult to see it, but he was there, but I couldn't see it. Is that now he becomes this force of inspiration for my art to try to change my local community, which is a very special idea.
So this is how Prosper comes into it too. Like,
Yes.
yeah. by bringing these insights and your experience to your community, there is an opening. There's an opening for a new kind of prosperity.
Exactly, exactly. For example, well, no, it's a long story that I can't enter into details, but I created a club for exploration of nature for kids in Spain. The name is Oika Kids, and the idea is to teach them how to use technology to know better nature, to discover nature. So, for example, I will give you another example. It's then I have had the chance to involve the mayor of my village, and they gave me access to a wooden hut at a bird reserve. I'm very lucky, But this wooden hut was abandoned during 10 years, so it's like a regeneration project of the place because it's quite a little bit destroyed. And inside this hut are living also a lot of beings, and one of them is a spider. And this spider, I did several movies about this spider. This spider is just fascinating how they build their web.
Yeah.
When you just look at it, and it was totally cosmic because it was a day when I entered into the wooden hut. The windows were closed, and just a little bit of light from the sun came inside the wooden hut and projected light on the web.
And people can watch this, right? You have an Earth story somewhere that you've shared. You've recorded this. So
stories.oikaexplain.com.
I'll put a link to your work, including this story and a lot of the other ones, in the notes for the YouTube video.
Yes. So also this marvelous being he was webbing for me like the universe. It was like webbing a galaxy because like the light shined on the web. Then I took my camera, but because my camera my mobile phone couldn't focus correctly, it was blurred, and a lot of stars appeared. It was net of stars, and it was like the technology didn't work correctly, but because of this malfunction, I could discover a dimension of the web I didn't know. And then I started to build a giant web inside the hut with some red strings. Then I started to build a giant red string. I can show you here. Got it. Yeah, I can show you because I have some images. Then I started to build a web. Very simple one, like that.
Yeah.
Right. Then I put in some bells. Bells, yes.
Yeah.
And then I also put in the image of the different spiders living in this area.
Yeah.
And then it's like a sculpture, but in fact, it's also a challenge for kids. When the kids arrive at the hut, they want to play with it. Then you can introduce that if they make sound, it's because the spider create a web, and the web is an ear. In fact, the spider create a web to listen to the world.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So it's this idea finally is that you have just an interaction, an inspiration, and you make a creation, and then try to make this creation something that people can be involved with, and also change this creation.
Yeah. Well, plus you've created a whole educational program for your local community. You've got the mayor involved. They're providing some funding for that.
Oh yeah. Well, if you want, I can show you. I did the web page. It's a long story because I did a lot of stuff. I was super inspired by this project, and I really doing a big effort to create resources and to involve as much as I can my local community. Because during before this project, I didn't interact with my local community, and it changed totally the way I was thinking. I understood that it was very important to contribute and interact with the local community. If we want to change the world, we have to change our house, our place.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I just did this. And I created the web page for the kids called Oika Kids. You can see. And it's a long story. I can't enter into details, but for example, one of the important stuff I'm trying to do beyond practices, learning, listening, and looking and taking pictures and recording sounds and using VR and so on. An important part of the project is to try to create a local economy. Then we created money for the project, or a unit based on a bird, because this bird came back to the area. And then, so the ibis, morito in Espanol,
we call it an ibis, but ibis.
Ibis, yes, ibis, yeah. Morito, he came back because he disappeared from the area. Then he came back. It's a good sign, that, nature comes back when they find animals, then get back their space, they come back.
Yeah.
That's what's going on right now with the COVID-19. A lot of animals are moving and are more,
There's always a silver lining.
Go back to some places.
Yeah.
And it's part of also the project, but this is bigger because it's not only kids. It's about trying to create a new dynamic in the village, in this case. And and why not an utopian idea to create a local economy based on improving the place.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Awesome, Fred. Awesome.
All right.
We
more or less what I want to tell you.
We can talk. We can do this again at some point. I think you and I have such a long history, and we've worked together so much. I'm sure there's a lot of things that we can share with people in the future. But I just wanted to give people a glimpse of how, with you as an example, really kind of as a role model, of how one artist, can engage with this Oika thing and manifest it in their work. And so, you're a digital artist and a storyteller and an audio, experienced person. You could have been a painter. You could have been a writer. You could have been a documentary filmmaker. You could be a musician. And so the point is that Oika is kind of genre agnostic, and it can work in a way that it's worked for you, really for any kind of artist. And so I just think that this and hopefully in the near future I'll be interviewing other artists that have gotten involved as well. But I wanted to start with you just because you're awesome.
All right, thank you.
And man, you've brought a lot to this, and you've made it much more enjoyable for me. And I don't know, you've brought more than I think you've gotten from it. So anyway, I just wanted to say thanks.
Yeah, it's a great thank you also. It's it's life project. It's a great project. Yeah.
Definitely. All right, bro. Well, thanks. And
thank you.
Again, let's do this again.
Whenever you want to, we can touch other topics,
Yeah, for sure.
Expand in other topics.
Yeah. But I'll post this on YouTube, and it'll be on the umbrella board for people to kind of see and get an example of how it works.
Okay, great.
Awesome, Fred. I'm going to just stop recording now. But hang on.
All right.
There's so many things that I wanted to show people. I just want to say this one thing, that I'm going to put some links in the comments. I really encourage people to check out some of Fred's Earth stories and some of the websites that he's built. Check out his wooden hut project in Spain. I think it's an incredible example of how we can use Oika to stimulate ecological restoration, ecological regeneration of places, because we're going to need that. We're really going to need that. I'll put those in the the comment or the show notes for the YouTube video. Okay, say bye to Fred.
Okay, goodbye.